My name is Dan Wood, and I am the founder of DWRI Letterpress.
My name is Lois Harada, and I'm the social stationery manager at DWRI Letterpress.
Actually, right about the time of Johnson Wales, 1994, I founded another press called DWRI Press, which was a combination of the word garbage and the city Warsaw, which in Polish is pronounced Warszawa, which I thought was pretty cool. So then I started DWRI Press, and the first few jobs were a weird combination of the things that we still do today, which were bat mitzvah announcement for a friend of mine's little sister, and this is all commercial offset printing, a brochure advertisement trifold for a friend's art summer camp in Newport, Rhode Island, and then an artist book project for an artist who is teaching at URI, Gary Richmond, who we literally just printed our most recent artist book for like 2 months ago. So that's, let's see, 1994, 31 years for printing artist book for this one customer. That book and all of these other projects I was printing on a offset press that they had in the URI print studio, which I was allowed to use as long as I could, which is a double win for me, talk at students about what I was doing with the offset press. But there was also 2 Vandercook presses there, and so that first artist book had offset interiors, and then my first experience with letterpress printing was printing on that Vandercook. He asked me if I could use it, and I said, yep, when I didn't actually know how to use either one of these presses. So I went directly to the Providence Public Library and found a book for the ITU, which is International Typographical Union, Guide to Printing, which had about 7 pages on using a cylinder-proof press. And so that would be my first introduction to letterpress printing.
I got started in commercial printing through fine art printmaking. So in my high school, I was really lucky to have an art teacher who was also really interested in printmaking. So we had etching and lithography. And through those processes, I decided I wanted to study more printmaking, and I came to RISD in 2006, where I got a Bachelor of Fine Arts in printmaking. And that's where I met Dan, taking a letterpress class. After I had taken a letterpress class at AS220 because I couldn't get into Dan's letterpress class.
Because I was too popular?
Yes, because Dan was too popular and the graphic design department wouldn't let me in, which is fun because now I get to teach in that department. And I've been working here since graduation, so since 2010.
Yes, so after starting this one press called DWRI Press, which was very intermittent, small projects here or there, blah, 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 I then went on to work in commercial offset printing as sometimes doing pre-press work, but mainly press work for the next 10 years. And in 2002, my daughter, Roma, was born. And at that point, I was doing a bit of, actually at that point, I'd been working in commercial offset printing, but on the side, I was doing commercial letterpress printing. So small projects, wedding invitations, art projects with people, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So the first press, which actually, funny enough, is right here, is a Chandler & Price 10 by 15. And I bought that in 1998. So from 1998 to 2002, I was doing a lot more letterpress projects. And then after Rome was born, quit my last commercial offset job and decided to focus on letterpress printing, which had been my part-time job. I would say full-time, but it was part-time while I was staying home with Roma. So 2002 is when I founded DWRI Letterpress. Yes.
And what does that stand for?
Well, the viewers of this podcast video, web video, archive thing could guess, but it stands for Dan Wood, Rhode Island, DWRI, which was inspired by DKNY, Donna Karan, New York. So I was told once in the 90s that I should start a t-shirt brand called DWRI with dirty grease-stained t-shirts because my clothes often were dirty. And I remembered that when I started a printing company.
Perfect.
I thought it was Donna Karen.
Donna Karen, not Donna Karen.
Donna Karen, New
Really? It's
York.
Donna Karen? So she must have made good clothes and not just relied on her name.
So we are a commercial letterpress print shop. So when I try to describe what the shop does, it's a big umbrella of different items. So business cards, wedding invitations, personal stationery, art editioning, packaging, CD sleeves. Somebody wants one vow renewal printed, maybe a ketubah, a menu for wedding invitations. So the list is really big. My day-to-day tends to be more wedding invitation these days. So thinking about save the dates, invitations themselves, and then day of printing, and then helping out with design on other projects sort of as needed. My worst print entry is pretty lucky I haven't had any. Dan seems to be the one with all of the injuries at the shop.
Lino cutting.
Lino cutting?
Didn't you cut yourself with lino?
No, I cut myself trying to line a drawer with contact paper.
The one where it hit here?
Yeah, it was just contact paper.
Oh, I thought it was a linoleum cut.
No, we did all get cellulitis at the old shop. A spider bit us all, and we had to all get antibiotics. That was it.
Yeah, 99% of the jobs, and that's bad karma to be talking about printing injuries. However, no, I mean, if you're not calling small little cuts here or there, most of the time I'm hardly hurting myself.
It's good to know. Is it bad karma?
I mean, it's like,
It's like saying weak math.
well, it's more like, yeah, exactly. It's more like that.
Little heebie-jeebies.
No, it's more, yeah, exactly. So it's more like if a job is running well, the last thing you're going to say, or if someone comes up to you and say, hey, that job's running pretty well, because these are all very old and complicated machines. And as soon as you say or think that, you're just completely screwed. So, but no, I would say if you really wanted to know, the worst that I've ever hurt myself would be on a no longer in the shop automatic foot-operated hydraulic foil stamper, and I smashed one of my fingers with both heat and pressure. And my sugar was really low, and it was a perfect example of things you shouldn't do when you're printing, where you're like setting up the job for tomorrow, no problem, it's late, you're tired, but it's not like super late, but you're planning to run the job tomorrow when you're clear-headed. Job set up, and my friend Christian was using the computer for something he was doing. I said, hey, Christian, how much time do you need? And he's like, oh, I don't know, maybe another 45 minutes. I'm like, why don't I just run the job? And my sugar was low, which means your judgment is not good. And then I hurt myself, and the adrenaline kicks in, and suddenly you need to pee really quickly, like immediately. So I'm in pain, but in shock. The adrenaline feeling shock comes in your body, and then you need to pee. So I said, hey, Christian, I need you to run to the McDonald's and grab me an orange juice because my sugar's dropping. I'm going to go pee, and then I need you to take me to the emergency room. And that was how I smashed my finger. That was after I smashed my finger, not before.
This is a pretty good x-ray.
Yeah.
Do you want to tell them about your sugar, or is that just in context, do you think?
Type 1 diabetic. Printing is a very strange, letterpress printing in particular is a very strange thing, because you need to be someone who is very, very detail-oriented, right? Mechanically inclined, like comfortable with wrenches and weird tools and things like that, and old, early 20th century, 19th century equipment, but then also have a very good aesthetic sense and eye for not just details, but the overall aesthetic impression of the things that you're trying to create. So it's a very strange set of skills of like details, an eye for design, or an eye for how good things look, and being mechanically inclined.
Do you still have that photo of your x-ray? I think Jordan should just flash it on for like 2 frames.
I don't think so, but I do have an x-ray of my foot with a needle that I stepped on once, not printing related,
No, that-
textiles related, and the eye of the needle is perfectly scene just floating in the middle of my heel.
I'll check. I think you sent it to us. It was like the perfect star-shaped crush.
It was bad.
It was really bad. Sorry.
Yeah.
I do get this question all the time, and I should probably be more prepared. So my day-to-day at the shop is now mostly computer-based, since I do a lot of design work for the shop. I do like running presses if we're really busy, or Dana's out of town, or someone else is out of town. I do really like the Ludlow typecasting machine because it is a machine that can make new metal type and has not as many moving parts as some other pieces in the shop. So I think I have a little bit more understanding of how it works, which is probably not actually accurate, but I think that's my favorite.
You're like the main Ludlow maintenance and like maintaining type person for an operator for a number of years.
Yes, but thank you for taking it over. I think he's going to ask you the same question.
We'll see.
Ooh.
Yeah, what's Lois's favorite piece of it?
Well, the one thing she didn't mention, which all of us really like a lot, is the gum tape dispenser. I don't think it gets quite as much accolades. Because that was probably your favorite. That was my favorite. Was it your favorite for a while or no? Am I projecting?
Yeah, sure. It doesn't work really well now, though, so
that's
it's kind of nobody's favorite.
Yeah.
All right, then, Dan, what is your favorite piece of machinery or equipment?
I would say some of the old things, like the gum paper dispenser, which came from the City of Boston Printing Department auction. But I would really have to say I like all of the machines, but the Linotype is definitely my favorite machine because it's just so completely insane, and it's a both positive and negative, like all addictions, addiction.
So as someone who works at the shop, Dan is very kind and lets us use the equipment to make our own printed work. And for me, commercial printing is very appealing because I can make 100 prints, 200 prints very quickly, which means that I can give them away. I can sell them, for a lot lower price than perhaps a fine art print like an etching or a silk screen. And it also means that because we have access to so many different fonts and letters, it's really fast to make a poster. So I've done a lot of poster work in the last few years, which is great to be able to think of a poster, come in, make the poster, and then get the poster out in a day or a weekend, which is really great. So that's sort of the commercial appeal or the appeal of commercial printing in my own personal practice. And lately, I've sort of swung more back to the fine art side of things, and it's nice to be able to have all of those different tools available to me so that I can match the technique to the concept that I'm working on.
So I definitely feel like as a printer, I am very much interested and advocate for the multiple in fine art, because you're not just creating a single work of art, like the edition, whether it's a signed edition of 25 or 50 or 500 copies, or an unsigned edition of thousands of copies, is the entire work of art. So I really like that idea, like Lois was saying, in terms of the affordability, the accessibility, all these types of things. As far as the way the process and the process involved in the politics of the artwork, I also really, in my own artwork, using the Linotype, which is the machine that was sort of the third real printing revolution after movable type in China and then in Korea, the printing press with Gutenberg, and then the Linotype comes along and just speeds up hand-set movable type to the nth degree. And so I love the fact that I'm using this exact same machine and exact same processes which most people got their information from in one shape or another for the last 500 years, particularly the last 100 years. And in our recent memory, in terms of commercial printing, it's making typographic references that is part of people's daily experiences. So that element of it is important to me in terms of having a sort of an into the person's perceptions of how this thing is going to bring up different kind of references in their mind. in terms of that, that bit of the political connection is important to me. It's also important because, you may be using typefaces that were involved with, the imperial military powers in terms of segregation, in terms of civil rights movements. There's so many references that are built into the technologies that we're using because they're connected with the historical time periods that to me is super important. As far as the commerce is concerned, it's also important for me to be acknowledging that all of these things, whether it's, etching, whether it's lithography, whether it's silkscreen, whether it's letterpress printing, these were all in one shape or form commercial tools to, in terms of etching, in terms of pictorial imagery, but otherwise in terms of sharing just straight out information. And so trying not to lose my train of thought. But I feel like that aspect of it, to me, is part of using material that's a part of people's daily lives and a part of this historical commercial process, because letterpress printing was the commercial printing, lithography was commercial printing. So offset presses are now showing up in art programs, just like letterpress presses showed up in the 1980s in art programs because they were no longer viable as commercial processes. So that part is also interesting to me, and then is also very interesting as a person who's either working or running a business. Trying to carve out the time for you to make your artwork is always a challenge. And so I feel like, there's a certain logic where Lois is using a lot of these processes in her artwork, and then for whatever reason shifting to more fine art processes because that's what the work demanded in your case in terms of things you're trying to make. But also having a shift between your work and your fine artwork is an important thing for some kind of mental clarity, which I'm known for. But also in terms of, if you're working for 8 hours a day and then you have, in my case, the Linotype Daily, 3 to 5 hours left to make a print that you're coming up with while you're at work is kind of a fun and interesting challenge, but it can also, it affects the work that you're doing for sure, I think is what I would say. One thing I would say is it's been a very interesting time to have been involved in letterpress printing since like 1994, say, until now, because, and it's also interesting to be seeing how things are changing in Italy. It's not ahead or behind, but just the culture of letterpress printing there is very different than the United States. But here, it really has gone from a pretty obscure thing. So when I was first doing wedding invitations, it would be like, oh, there's that guy who takes nice invitations, right? They were printed letterpress. And then within, 3 to 5 years, so say like more frequent stuff, like say 1998 to 2002, right? It went from, there's a person who can make nice cards or nice invitations to 5 years later, like 2005 to 10, it was more like, ooh, there's somebody who does letterpress and it's really cool. Whereas before it was they made nice invitations, and then it was they make letterpress invitations, and then soon the letterpress had just taken over. They want lots of impression, blah, 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 ye oldie type of style. But and then, industry-wise, the New York Stationery Show went from having, like 2 or 3 letterpress people that would be there to within 10 years, from like say 2000 to 2010 or 2005 to 2015, some 10-year period, who knows? The incunabula period of the letterpress industry in the United States. Sorry, incunabula. It went from having 2 or 3 letterpress printers to 80% of the people showing at the New York Stationery Show were letterpress printers. And so it's been a very interesting history to see how that has changed. And I would say in some ways we've been lucky because it wasn't just invitations, because suddenly there's 10,000 people doing invitations, or people got into their own proprietary card lines and things like that. We were always doing the commercial work. We were doing the stationery work. We have gone back and forth in terms of doing our own, lines, or not really lines, but own stationery goods, and then always the artwork and, the packaging and other stuff. So we've been lucky in the sense that our range has been pretty broad, so that as more people are doing what, or things ebb and flow in the industry, there's always like, oh, no one's, what happened to all the, I don't know, bookmarks one year, or stationary Christmas cards? Suddenly it's all disappeared, and suddenly it's all foil, or suddenly it's something else. And so we've been able to, like even in COVID, I was doing enough art projects that even though, the shop was closed as far as the employees being able to come in, there were still art projects that I was working on with commission projects with other artists that kept a lot of income coming in for a short period. So.
I think that makes sense. And to piggyback on what you said, Dan, and being here for 14 or 15 years, it's interesting to see how demand has changed for letterpress. And you're right that there are suddenly 1,000 competitors, but are they coming in at a point where they've taken a class in college, they've suddenly scraped together enough income to buy a $20,000 Vandercook, and now they suddenly...
They really scrape
Mom,
that's fun for that.
Yeah, exactly. Or, they've lucked into this equipment, and now suddenly, is it a hobby still? Is it a commercial enterprise? And so because the shop is so versatile in the types of work that we do, also with Dan's expertise, we're pretty nimble in being able to handle a lot of jobs that sometimes those smaller spaces just aren't suited for. And again, because we can do a lot of different things, that sort of kept us busy, even when, the demand for certain items is a little more fallow. And so we are talking to you in the past, in September of 2025, and kind of trying to project what...
But that's today.
Well, but they're not going to watch it today. But trying to project what our market looks like with tariffs, with the economy shifts, because we are often a luxury item. And so, will we print less holiday cards this year? Which I think the answer is yes. However, will we continue to print some high-end wedding invitations? And I think the answer is still yes, because a lot of economic pressures don't hit folks that are in that market. So there's always kind of a swing, and a few weeks where suddenly there's no work and everyone kind of panics, and then suddenly we're too busy. And so there's always kind of the question of how do you keep things flat, which I don't know. I mean, you've been running the business for so long. It seems like that's just what it is.
Yep.
Summertime is slow, New Year is slow.
But in some ways, that's the other thing on that point exactly, which is interesting, is that printing forever, like a lot of trades, but really, continually has been truly a trade apprenticeship type business. And so worked in commercial shops, you'd start as a feeder, maybe after a few years, all you're doing is loading paper. You make it to the second press print, first press print, whatever. But in this context with letterpress, there aren't, like a lot of the people you'd meet would be the older people, that it would be like the child, the son or daughter of the person who had started the shop, or the grandparents' shop. They'd be in their maybe 50s or 60s, or there'd be like the young people in their 20s or 30s, and there's this weird gap. But here, truly, like hearing Lois talk about that and the worries about the business flow, if I was to go away for 6 weeks, you talk about the expertise, the shop runs extremely well because you've been doing this so long, you figured out a way to do it in a way that works well for you and for Tom and Hope as well. But it really has been they're not things you're picking up in school. And so it's really through working on a CMP, through working on the paper cutter. Eventually, Lois is running the foil Heidelbergs, the ink-based Heidelbergs, right? It's truly a thing that you just learn through experience, and I think that's one of the really beautiful things about letterpress printing or printing in general, is that it's knowledge that's just handed down through experience that you develop, and not so much something that you can go take a course. I mean, you can take a course, but that's not going to help you in terms of running the business. So, like when you said that about the 2 weeks not working and then the 2 weeks busy and just sort of getting used to that idea, that's something that is an apprenticeship learned thing that you never get used to.
Yeah.
But you have to try.
Right. And I think too, because we all know how to print, then we have a really great time, or an easier time selling that back to the clients, because sometimes we work with graphic designers who may send us something that is not an appropriate fit, and we say why, what changes they can make, and hopefully that's an open conversation too.
And you know that you know a lot more than you think you do because you've been doing it so long.
Right. And I know a lot more than the graphic designers.
And yes, and your standards are
that
often
out.
higher if I am printing something and I think it's perfect or even good enough, but perhaps you, with your experience, may be able to look at it and say, no, this owl has way too much ink, and you know that, and you should make it look better for this very expensive client.
And then you kind of take your glasses off and go, it looks pretty good, send it along.
Yeah, vision. It was a little tricky getting used to the
bifocals,
progressive
yeah.
bifocals for a couple of weeks there. So basically, this is the Linotype machine. Linotype was invented in 1885. It's the first machine that automated the handset typesetting process. So prior to this, any newspaper, any book, any advertisement, anything anyone was printing would need to be hand set letter by letter by letter. The Linotype is this insane innovation which was invented by a German watchmaker, a German immigrant in Baltimore, Maryland, named Ottmar Mergenthaler, and it automated that process. So basically what's going to happen when I turn on this machine is whenever I type a character on the keyboard, it's going to drop a matrix, right? So this is a matrix for capital H in 8-point Electra. It's going to have the mold for whatever letter form, number, character, etc. in there. There's this sort of weird key system there. And it's super precision made so that these are all manufactured, cast, punched. The letter form is punched into the middle. You can line everything up, and there's a plunger that's going to force molten lead right up into this face, right? The lead is going to solidify instantly with all the letters in a row, nothing's like slipping through and spraying all over your face. And then suddenly you have this brand new type, never before used, perfect condition line of type on a slug ready to get locked up in a press and printed. So it really is considered like the sort of third great printing revolution because it meant that the typesetting, the presses were big steam-powered presses at this point. But the one slow spot was the hand typesetting. So now instead of one newspaper in a city, a daily paper, you might have 2 or 3 daily newspapers or 5 different weekly newspapers with different political viewpoints. And so that it really was like this huge step forward in terms of information sharing and accessibility. Okay, so I'm turning on the machine. And what's going to happen here is every time I hit a key, it's dropping the matrix for a particular character. So in this case, this is a lowercase b right here. So it's dropped the lowercase b, need a L, okay? And it's library, not library, okay? This is going to be centered, 12 point, okay. This right here is telling me where it's going to cut the slug exactly at 12 points. There's a knife that's going to cut this hot metal right after it's cast. It's set on a 12-point slug because position 3 is 12 point. And we could have it centered, quad right, quad left, or regular, which means it would be justified with these things called space bands in between each word, which would all push up equally until your line is full to justify the type. And then the space between each word is going to be equidistant, which is an insane, simple mechanical innovation. So now I have my word that I'm going to cast right there. I'm going to go to cast. As soon as I go to cast, it's going to go over to the casting position, and I can start composing the next line. So I can do all these things simultaneously. So I'm typing to cast the line. It's casting, and then as soon as it's done casting, the matrices are going to go up to the top of the machine, and depending on this key, kind of reverse key combination, it's going to sort and redistribute all your matrices. So you're getting composing the type, casting brand new type, and then it's redistributing your type for you. So you don't, like, it's a newspaper, you'd have to spend half the night putting all the type away that you just sent all day. So now I'm going to go to cast. You can see. And now it's gone down. There's a plunger in the back that just went down. And that's the sound of them being redistributed. And now, out of nowhere, we have a slug that says Providence Public Library. So literally, we could ink this up. Ouch, it's very hot. And print it instantly on a press. Okay. So this is going to be hot, but it says, if we, the leaders of this planet, can offer nothing but terror, conflict, pollution, fear, inequalities, and war to 8 billion people, then we must confront the truth. We are complicit in crimes against our civilization and our planet. By Natasha Pirk-Musar, the president of Slovenia. Yep. And then this could instantly be taken over there, thrown on a press, and in fact, should we do that? Sure. Okay. This is the chase that you lock the type into. Okay. And I don't know what form or shape the print is going to take at this point. Let's do it over again because I forgot to put in something very important, which is quotation marks. Setting type for a record label, which we're going to put aside. What happens, I guess I'll just try this first. Okay. This in there for just a second. Good. All right. And then you'll see, through the magic of photo editing, this is called a Heidelberg Windmill. It's called a windmill because the grippers are spinning around. And then okay. So this wants to go this way a little bit. That looks good. Okay. Good enough. Okay. Then you can take a look. So there's definitely some changes I would want to do here. Like, so yeah, I'll probably recast that last line. So it'll be, we are complicit, stop. Ooh, that's going to be all caps. That's what I'll do. I think that works. Plus you don't have to do the word W-E. Okay, and that is the Linotype. Literally, through the magic of photo editing, that'll seem like seconds ago, but even in real life, that was like 5 minutes ago. We just cast this, we could be printing thousands of copies as the Gestapo or ICE agents come barging through the door. No, stop! Anyways, that's the story.